I thought he loved me, until he called me at 3 a.m. and made me listen to his ultimate betrayal. And then the late afternoon sun streamed through the tall windows of Harrison University's art studio, casting a golden glow over the chaos of sketches, 3D models, and scattered coffee cups. The familiar hum of conversations mixed with the whirring of printers and the scratch of pencils against paper. My hands were covered in graphite as I fine-tuned the details of my latest design, a geometric layout that needed to be perfect for the upcoming deadline. Across from me, Mark adjusted the lighting on his 3D model, muttering to himself about shadow angles. Jessica, always full of energy, leaned over my desk, watching me work with an amused smile. "Another masterpiece in the making," she teased, nudging my shoulder. I smirked, shaking my head. "More like another stress-induced breakdown in the making. This project is eating me alive." Mark chuckled without looking up. "That's why we're here all night, right? No one's leaving until it's perfect." The all-nighter had been inevitable. Our professor had given us an intense deadline for our final project, creating a series of abstract 3D models that combined artistic vision with mathematical precision. The project itself was thrilling, but the pressure was suffocating. Still, there was a strange satisfaction in working under the glow of desk lamps, surrounded by the quiet hum of focused energy. As I wiped my hands on a paper towel, I glanced at my phone. No messages. It was strange. Nathan and I usually exchanged quick updates throughout the day, even if it was just a simple, "How's your day going?" I hesitated before typing out a message. "Hey, working late tonight? Big project? Hope your day's going well." I added a smiley face at the end, hoping it would lighten the mood if he was feeling distant. I hit send and turned back to my work, but an uneasy feeling settled in my stomach. Nathan had been acting off lately, quiet, reserved, like there was something he wasn't saying. Conversations that used to flow effortlessly now felt forced, like I was constantly defending myself for being busy. The hours passed in a blur of color palettes, calculations, and heated discussions about structural integrity. Every so often, I'd glance at my phone, but the screen remained dark. Jessica noticed my distraction and nudged me with her elbow. "Still nothing?" she asked quietly. I sighed, shaking my head. "It's weird. He always texts back, even if it's just a quick response." "Maybe he's just busy," she suggested, though there was doubt in her voice. "Maybe," I said, but I wasn't convinced. By the time the clock hit 2 a.m., we were deep in the final stages of our designs. Mark was obsessing over minute shadow placements, while Jessica and I adjusted the backdrop colors for better contrast. Despite the exhaustion, I felt a strange kind of exhilaration. This was what I loved, getting lost in a creative flow, pushing past limits, and seeing ideas come to life. I sent Nathan another text. "Still working. Miss you. Hope you're okay." The read receipt popped up instantly, but there was no reply. A heavy feeling settled in my chest, but I forced myself to focus. Now wasn't the time to dwell on whatever was going on with him. At 5:30 a.m., we finally wrapped up. The final project stood before us, a stunning display of shapes and light, perfectly balanced in a way that made all the stress worth it. We let out a collective sigh of relief, stretching our sore muscles and packing up our things. As I stepped outside, the morning air was crisp, carrying the quiet stillness of dawn. Walking home, I felt the weight of the night settle over me. My mind was split between the pride of finishing our work and the gnawing discomfort over Nathan's silence. As I entered my apartment, the familiar scent of coffee lingered in the air, but something felt off. I noticed a note on the kitchen counter, scrawled in Nathan's sharp handwriting. Went out to clear my head. "We'll talk later." I stared at the words, reading them over and over, but they didn't change. It was so unlike him. Usually, even if we were upset, there was effort, an attempt to smooth things over, to talk. But this felt cold, detached. I sank onto the couch, my bag still slung over my shoulder, exhaustion pulling at my body. A part of me wanted to brush it off, to believe that maybe I was overthinking things, but deep down, I knew better. Something was wrong, and whatever it was, It was going to change everything. The apartment was eerily silent when I woke up later that morning. My body ached from the long hours of working through the night, but it wasn't just the exhaustion weighing me down. It was the unanswered questions lingering from the moment I had walked through the door and found Nathan's note. I stared at the ceiling, the words replaying in my mind. Went out to clear my head. We'll talk later. It wasn't like him. Nathan wasn't the kind of person to leave things unresolved. If he was upset, we talked. If he was frustrated, we worked through it. But this time, he had just walked away. I reached for my phone, my fingers hovering over the screen before I finally opened our messages. Still nothing from him. The last message I had sent, still working. Miss you. Hope you're okay, was left on read. A hollow feeling settled in my stomach. I hesitated before typing a new one. Hey, I saw your note. Can we talk? I sent it and set the phone down, rubbing my temples. My head throbbed from lack of sleep, but there was no way I could rest now. An hour passed, then another. My phone stayed silent. Frustration built inside me, an uncomfortable mix of worry and irritation. I wasn't going to sit around and let my thoughts spiral, so I decided to distract myself. I grabbed my sketchbook and tried to focus on new designs for an upcoming project, but every time I started a line, my mind drifted back to Nathan. His sudden distance, the way his mood had shifted over the past few weeks. I had tried to tell myself it was just stress, but now I wasn't so sure. By noon, I couldn't take it anymore. I threw on a hoodie and grabbed my keys, deciding that if Nathan wasn't going to answer my messages, I would go find him myself. His apartment was only a short walk away, and as I stepped outside, the crisp autumn air did little to cool the burning frustration in my chest. I replayed our last conversation, trying to pinpoint where things had gone wrong. It had started with small things. Him getting annoyed when I was too busy with schoolwork, the way he'd hesitate before responding when I talked about my projects. But this was different. When I arrived at his building, I hesitated at the entrance. My phone buzzed just as I was about to press the buzzer, and for a split second, I hoped it was him. But it was Jessica. Hey, any updates? She texted. I sighed and quickly replied. Nothing yet. I'm at his place now. I pressed the buzzer. No answer. I tried again. Still nothing. My frustration grew, and I almost turned to leave when I noticed something. Nathan's car was parked just down the street. He was home. My stomach twisted. He was ignoring me. The realization stung more than I wanted to admit. I turned and walked away, my hands clenched into fists in my hoodie pockets. Fine. If he wanted space, I would give him space. But that didn't mean I was going to sit around and pretend everything was okay. As I walked back toward campus, my phone finally buzzed. I stopped in my tracks, my heart pounding as I saw his name on the screen. Yeah, we can talk later, his message read. That was it. No explanation, no apology, just those 4 words. I stared at the screen, my frustration boiling over. After everything, after ignoring me for hours, that was all he had to say? I wanted to call him, demand to know what was going on, but something stopped me. A deep, gut-wrenching feeling told me that whatever was happening, I wasn't going to like the answer. I forced myself to take a deep breath and pocketed my phone, heading straight to Jessica's place instead of my apartment. If anyone could help me make sense of this, it was her. When she opened the door, she took one look at my face and sighed. Let me guess, still no real response? I nodded, stepping inside. He finally texted back, but all he said was, yeah, we can talk later. That's it. Jessica frowned, closing the door behind me. That doesn't sit right with me. Something's off. Tell me about it. I flopped onto her couch, running a hand through my hair. I don't get it. If he's upset about me staying out all night, fine, let's talk about it. But this? Ignoring me for hours and then acting like nothing's wrong? It's not like him. Jessica sat beside me, crossing her arms. I don't want to make you panic, but do you think he's hiding something? I hesitated, the thoughts settling uncomfortably in my mind. I don't know. I want to believe he wouldn't, but something just doesn't feel right. Jessica sighed. Look, if he finally wants to talk, hear him out. But don't let him make you feel guilty for something you didn't do. You were working on a project. You weren't out partying or ignoring him. He's the one acting weird. I nodded, but the unease in my stomach didn't go away. I had no idea what was coming, but deep down, I had a feeling that whatever Nathan had to say, it was going to change everything. The apartment was dim when I finally returned that evening. The sun had dipped below the city skyline, casting long shadows across the walls. My phone remained silent, despite the hours that had passed since Nathan's vague response. The weight of the uncertainty pressed against my chest, making it difficult to focus on anything else. I moved through my usual routine, putting my bag down, changing into something comfortable, fixing a cup of tea. But every movement felt detached, like I was simply going through the motions while waiting for something inevitable to happen. I sat on the couch, staring at my phone, debating whether to message him again. Jessica's words echoed in my mind. Don't let him make you feel guilty for something you didn't do. She was right. I had done nothing wrong. I had stayed up all night for my project, not to avoid him, not to disrespect him. And yet, the way he was acting made me feel like I had committed some kind of betrayal. Just as I was about to give up and go to bed, my phone rang. Nathan's name flashed on the screen. My pulse quickened as I hesitated for a brief second before answering. Hello? My voice came out quieter than I intended. There was silence on the other end for a moment, then a deep breath. Hey, he said, his voice steady but distant. Are you home? Yeah, I said cautiously, gripping the edge of the couch. What's going on, Nathan? You've been ignoring me all day. A pause. I just needed time to think, he said finally. I swallowed hard, bracing myself. Think about what? About us, he admitted. The words sent a cold chill through me. I forced myself to breathe, to stay calm. What about us? Nathan sighed, the sound heavy with frustration. Emily, I don't know if this is working anymore. Everything inside me froze. I opened my mouth to speak, but nothing came out. He continued before I could even process what he was saying. Last night, the whole project thing, you being out all night, not even checking in with me, it made me realize how different we are, he said. You don't understand what it's like for me, watching you prioritize everything else over this relationship. I felt my jaw clench. Nathan, I texted you multiple times. You didn't respond. That's not me ignoring you. That's you choosing not to answer. It's not just about that, he snapped. It's everything. Your lifestyle, your constant need to be surrounded by other people, your late nights. I don't know if I can do this anymore. His words felt like a slap. My lifestyle? I repeated, my voice rising. I go to school. I work hard. That's my lifestyle. And if you can't handle that, then maybe you're right. Maybe this isn't working. Silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. My hands trembled as I gripped my phone. I had expected tension, maybe even an argument, but not this. Not him tearing apart everything we had built in a single phone call. Then, just when I thought the conversation couldn't get worse, the sound on the other end shifted. A rustling noise, followed by something unmistakable. A soft, breathy moan. My blood ran cold. Nathan? My voice barely came out. The rustling continued. Then his voice, low, deliberate, cruel. I wanted you to hear what you've been missing. For a second, I didn't understand. My mind refused to process what was happening. Then realization crashed into me like a tidal wave, leaving me breathless. He wasn't alone. Another voice, feminine, indistinct, murmured something in the background, followed by more movement. Nathan, I choked out, my throat tightening. What the hell are you doing? He exhaled slowly, like he had been waiting for this moment. Maybe now you understand how it feels, he said coldly. How it feels to be ignored. The line went dead. I sat frozen, my fingers numb around my phone. My ears rang with the silence that followed, my heartbeat pounding violently against my ribcage. My entire body shook as the full weight of his actions crashed down on me. This wasn't just an argument. This wasn't just a fight. This was deliberate. This was cruel. This was meant to break me. Tears blurred my vision as my phone slipped from my hands, hitting the floor with a hollow thud. I gasped for air, my chest heaving as I struggled to comprehend what had just happened. Every memory, every moment we had shared, shattered into pieces. The man I had loved, the man I had trusted, had just proven he was capable of something I could have never imagined. Without thinking, I grabbed my phone and dialed Jessica. It rang twice before she picked up. Emily? Her voice was groggy, but the second she heard me sobbing, she was instantly alert. What happened? I couldn't get the words out at first. My throat closed, and all I could do was shake, the tears coming in violent, uncontrollable waves. Talk to me, she said, her voice firm but concerned. What did he do? I inhaled sharply, forcing myself to speak. Nathan just called me. He was with someone else. He wanted me to hear it. Jessica's sharp intake of breath was followed by silence. Then, with a steel-like edge in her voice, she said, "I'm coming over." She hung up before I could say anything else. I curled up on the couch, my entire body racked with shock. My hands clenched into fists, my nails digging into my palms. I couldn't stop shaking. The pain was unbearable, unlike anything I had ever felt before. By the time Jessica arrived, I was still sitting in the same spot, staring blankly at the floor. She rushed in, dropping her bag by the door and kneeling in front of me. Her hands cupped my face, tilting my head up to meet her eyes. "Emily," she said softly, "look at me." I blinked, fresh tears spilling over. Her expression hardened. "That was abuse. What he just did to you. It was meant to hurt you in the worst way possible." I let out a shaky breath, my voice barely above a whisper. "I don't understand. How could he do this?" Jessica pulled me into a tight hug, holding me as I sobbed. "Because he's a coward. And you deserve better than this." I buried my face in her shoulder, allowing myself to break down completely. There was no fixing this. There was no salvaging what was left. Nathan had burned it all to the ground. And now, I had to figure out how to move forward from the wreckage he had left behind. The morning light seeped through the curtains, but it felt distant, unreal. My body was exhausted, my head heavy from the weight of last night. My chest still ached from crying, and my throat felt raw, but the shock had settled into something quieter now, something colder. I stared at the ceiling, my mind replaying every second of that call, every word, every sound. Nathan had wanted to hurt me, and he had succeeded in the worst possible way. Jessica had stayed the night, refusing to leave me alone. She had fallen asleep on the couch after hours of comforting me, her presence the only thing keeping me from spiraling further. I knew she would wake up soon and check on me, but I couldn't move. I didn't want to talk. I didn't even want to think. I just wanted to stop feeling. But the pain wasn't going anywhere. It was sitting in my chest, pressing down on me, reminding me of everything I had lost. Not just Nathan, but the version of him I had loved, the relationship I had believed in, the trust one had foolishly held onto for far too long. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. My heart lurched, but when I glanced at the screen, it wasn't Nathan. It was my sister, Leah. I hesitated, then picked up. "Hey," I said, my voice hoarse. There was a pause on the other end. Leah's voice was cautious, careful. "Are you okay?" I let out a bitter laugh. "No." She sighed. "Jessica texted me. Told me what happened. I wanted to call sooner, but I didn't want to overwhelm you." Tears burned at my eyes again, but I refused to let them fall. "I don't even know what to say," I admitted. "I keep replaying it, and I can't believe it." Leah's tone hardened. "That's because it was cruel. He did it to hurt you. On purpose. There's no coming back from something like that." I swallowed, my throat thick. "I don't even recognize him anymore." "Because this is who he really is," she said bluntly. "You're just seeing it now. And I hate that you had to see it this way." I clenched my jaw, trying to steady my breathing. "I don't know what to do." "You do," she countered. "You just don't want to say it yet." I knew what she meant. Ending things with Nathan was the only option. There was no fixing this. No talking it out. No pretending. He had crossed a line that I couldn't come back from. But even knowing that, the thought of actually facing him, of saying the words out loud, made my stomach twist. Jessica stirred in the other room, and I heard her padding toward me before she gently pushed the bedroom door open. Her hair was a mess, her eyes still heavy with sleep, but the second she saw my face, she sat down beside me without a word. Leah sighed through the phone. Listen, Em, I know this is a lot, but you can't just sit in this. You need to confront him, end it. Not for him, for you. Jessica nodded in agreement, overhearing Leah's words. She's right, she murmured. You don't deserve even a second more of this. I exhaled shakily. I know. There was a long silence, then Leah's voice softened. Do you want me to come over? I shook my head, even though she couldn't see me. No. I just need to get through today first. Okay, she said gently. But call me after, okay? I promised I would and hung up. Jessica stayed beside me, waiting. I finally looked at her, my voice barely above a whisper. I have to see him. She didn't look surprised. Want me to come with you? I considered it but shook my head. I need to do this alone. Jessica pressed her lips together, clearly unhappy about it. But she didn't argue. Just be careful, okay? I nodded, knowing there was no way to be careful with something like this. I got dressed slowly, my hands steady even though everything inside me felt like it was unraveling. When I left the apartment, the cold air bit at my skin, but I barely felt it. The walk to Nathan's place felt both too long and too short at the same time. Every step felt heavy, like I was dragging the weight of our entire relationship behind me. By the time I reached his door, my heart was pounding. My fingers hovered over the doorbell before I finally pressed it. Seconds passed. Then the door opened, and there he was. Nathan looked tired, like he hadn't slept, but I didn't care. The sight of him, standing there like nothing had happened, made my stomach churn. Hey, he said, his voice unreadable. I stepped inside without responding. The apartment looked the same, but everything about it felt different now, like I had walked into a stranger's home. I turned to face him, my arms crossed tightly over my chest. You don't have to explain, I said, my voice cold. I know why you did it. Nathan's expression faltered. Emily, I don't care. I cut him off. I don't care what excuse you have. I don't care how you justify it in your head. You wanted to hurt me, and you did. Congratulations. He exhaled, running a hand through his hair. I was angry. I wasn't thinking. I laughed, but it was sharp, bitter. No, you were thinking. You knew exactly what you were doing. That's the part that hurts the most. His jaw tightened. I felt like you didn't care anymore. I stared at him in disbelief. So your solution was to cheat on me? To humiliate me? He looked away. I don't know. I wasn't trying to. Stop, I said, my voice sharp. Just stop. Silence stretched between us. I came here to say one thing, I said finally, my voice unwavering. We're done. Whatever this was, whatever we had, it's over. His eyes darkened. Emily, please. No. I cut him off. You made your choice. Now I'm making mine. I turned and walked to the door. My hands didn't shake as I reached for the handle. I expected him to say something, to try one last time to make me stay, but he didn't. And somehow that hurt the most. I stepped outside, the cold air stinging against my skin. I inhaled deeply, letting it settle in my lungs. Then, for the first time since that phone call, I felt like I could finally breathe. The walk home felt surreal, like I was moving through a city that was both familiar and completely unrecognizable at the same time. The weight on my chest hadn't disappeared, but it had shifted. It wasn't the crushing, suffocating pain I had felt before. It was something else, something final. I had done it. I had ended things with Nathan. And yet, instead of feeling relief, all I felt was empty. When I reached my apartment, Jessica was already waiting. She had probably been pacing since I left. The second she saw my face, she straightened. her eyes scanning me for any sign that I had broken down. I dropped my keys on the counter and collapsed onto the couch. "It's done," I said quietly. Jessica sat beside me. "How did he take it?" I let out a short, humorless laugh. "I don't think he expected me to actually walk away." Jessica scoffed. "Of course he didn't. Guys like him always think they can get away with anything." I rubbed my temples, exhaustion settling in. He tried to give some excuse. Said he was angry. That he wasn't thinking. Jessica rolled her eyes. "Bullshit." I exhaled sharply. "I know. And for the first time, I didn't try to fix it. I didn't try to find some way to make it work." Jessica's expression softened. "That's because you know you deserve better." I looked at her, my throat tightening. "Then why does it still hurt so much?" She reached over, squeezing my hand. "Because you loved him. And because when we love someone, we convince ourselves that they're better than they really are." I swallowed hard. "I feel so stupid." Jessica shook her head. "You're not stupid. You were just trying to believe in something that wasn't real anymore." I nodded, even though it didn't make me feel any better. I had spent months trying to hold on to something that had been slipping through my fingers. I had excused the small things, ignored the warning signs, convinced myself that if I just tried a little harder, things would get better. But they never did. For a while, we sat in silence. Eventually, Jessica stood and stretched. "Come on," she said. "We're not sitting here all day feeling sorry for ourselves." I blinked. "What?" She grabbed my jacket and tossed it at me. "You need fresh air. And coffee. Lots of coffee." I hesitated, but Jessica gave me a look that left no room for argument. So I got up, put on my jacket, and followed her outside. The city felt different, but maybe it was just me. Maybe it was because, for the first time in a long time, I wasn't walking around hoping Nathan would text me back. I wasn't worried about what mood he would be in, or whether I was disappointing him in some way. The weight of that was gone, and even though it left behind an aching emptiness, it also made me feel lighter. Jessica took me to a small cafe near campus, the kind with mismatched chairs and walls covered in local art. The smell of coffee and fresh pastries filled the air, wrapping around me like a familiar embrace. We ordered our drinks and found a corner table. As I took my first sip of coffee, Jessica smirked. "So, what's next?" I raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" Jessica leaned forward. "You just ended things with the worst boyfriend in history. You're officially free. What do you want to do with that freedom?" I stared into my cup, thinking. I had spent so long wrapped up in Nathan, his expectations, his moods, his disappointments, that I had forgotten what it felt like to just be me. "I don't know," I admitted. "I guess I have to figure that out." Jessica grinned. "Good. That means the next chapter of your life is officially starting." I smiled faintly. I wasn't sure if I was ready for whatever came next, but for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid to find out.